The camera I'm going to talk about today is a camera which came from about 1964, and it's an English camera, and I think it's a little bit different. I only discovered it recently. I was doing a thing on English cameras and British cameras, and I was looking at the various makes of Ilford and AGI, people who were making cameras in the 1960s, 40s, 50s and 60s, and I came across this rather nice camera. I came across the Ilford Sprite. Here's the box, and inside the box we have this rather lovely plastic 1960 camera. I think this came from about 1964, and they manufactured them until 1967. And Ilford were, still are a major film, chemical and photographic paper manufacturer. And in the 60s they produced a number of cameras, but they actually never manufactured the cameras themselves. They would get someone else to manufacture the camera, and then they would badge it. The main purpose of Ilford was, as always, to make film and photographic paper. So in one sense, the whole idea of the cameras was to get people to shoot more film and to take more Ilford film. However, they did have a line of cameras. I've talked about a couple of them before, and this is a fascinating camera. It was actually made by a camera company called AGI, who were a Croydon-based company, and actually they are still going, but as a they make surveillance equipment for the ministry and for the defence industry. But in the 50s and 60s they were making these AGI cameras, and this you can find as an Agulux 35 flush, I believe. But this is the Ilford version. Nice Ilford badge here. Let's take it out of the box. Adjust this a little bit, and what do we have here? Yes, we have basically quite a plastic looking camera. We have a very simple lens. We have 3 f-stops. We have a f16, f11 and a f8. And I presume there only seems to be one shutter speed, which I think is around 100th of a second. And if I click the camera, I'm checking out what I'm filming. Yeah, you can hear the shutter there. It's a spring shutter. So it's a fixed focal lens, so we can't change the focus on the lens, but we can change the aperture. So it's a very straightforward camera. It really is a point and shoot. As I said, the body is fascinating because it is so plastic, and this rather nice modernist look. It looks like it ought to belong to a Mini Cooper in grey. It has that real 60s style. It has an optimism, I think. Now, if I can optimistically open the back of the camera, the whole back comes off, and we have a spool that comes up here, film in here, over here, and click and wind on. Now, one of the key things I found when using this camera, you must make sure you fully wind it until it goes click. And at that point, it resets the shutter, and you can take the next photograph. Now, this camera has the lack of something that is on nearly every other camera, apart from a very few. If you just look at it here, can you see what's missing? It might not be obvious, but there's no sprockets on the take-up, right? So the pure wind function is on the lever. There's no sprockets to actually move the film along. The only camera I really know of in the same system was the early Voortlander. Now, there's another thing missing. If I look on the bottom, There's no clutch lever because there is no clutch, because there are no sprockets. So how do you wind the film back? Well, if the lever is not fully taken back, the take-up is loose. It only becomes ratchet when it clicks here. When you've finished your film, obviously you haven't taken it all the way back, the lever here, so that is when you can wind back completely. And when you've wound your film fully back, you can then take the film out, make sure the lever then clicks, and then you're all set to load a new film. As I said, the bot is, I think, a masterpiece of 60s. The bot, I think, is a really nice design, and the little leaflet explaining how to use the camera as well is a really nice design. I haven't got the flash for this camera, which is a bit of a shame. However, was it any good when I actually took it out and used? Let's find out. So this camera has very little to control it, and yet this first shot of my path was quite sharp and absolutely usable. It was a pretty dull day when I took these photographs, and there had been a bit of an incident outside my house, and this poor car, well, actually a car came down the street and actually wiped out 4 cars. It was a bit dramatic at 6:30 in the morning, but you can actually see the number plate of this car, and as I said, it's on this photo it's gone a bit at the edges, and I think there's a bit of a camera shake. But for a very limited control camera, I was quite impressed with this little Sprite. It's performed, in this dull day quite well. The fixed lens is fine. I would actually quite like to do another film in this camera. I did have an issue that on this first time I took the film, I didn't always wind on correctly, and that meant I lost some frames, but I know you've got to wind it till it clicks, and I will try another film in this camera. They're not easy to find, but if you do, have a go with one. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.